Mr. Southwick, how you doing today, sir?
Awesome. How you doing? Good.
Good, good. We're going to talk about Evan's childhood soon enough, but I wanted to talk about yours a little bit because
Okay.
every teenager has probably felt this at one point or another. But born and raised in LA,
Yep.
it's a little bit different than the island. Have you ever felt that trapped feeling that Evan has to cope with?
Ooh. I think in a sense, not physically, but I think like growing up in LA, everybody has a very specific idea on how you're supposed to be and act and dress and who you're friends with and growing up in that is a similar sense of like you feel trapped because you can't do anything except what I think other people are assuming for you. So in a sense, I think that it could be, but I never really thought about that. I think that Evan being trapped on the island is such a different like he internalizes it very differently. You know what I mean? Than a lot of other kids would, you know?
Why do you think, with the curse on the island and all these crazy things happening, all these kind of urban legends that obviously Evan knows about, why do you think being trapped on the island is a fate worse than death for him specifically?
There's a couple of different ways. I feel like being a teenager and like having to be on that island and not do anything except be on that island and experience all everything on that island is torturous. And I think that like a big part of Evan, especially with his dad, I think of like it's not so much like why like it's not so much like I'm not able to leave. Why can't we leave? It's like, why are you not telling me why we can't leave? And I think that like a lot of the show is, he's really upset about his circumstances of not having the freedom to leave, but it's also just his dad not giving him good reasons and not being honest with him. And I think that that's way more upsetting to Evan than actually not leaving.
How have you been able to tap into that teenage angst? Because I find it kind of ironic that with the two of your major roles, you've played a kid who has major issues with your dad. And yet
That's
I read,
great. Yeah.
and then I read that you had a wonderful relationship with your, or still do, obviously, you're still a kid, but you know what I mean? You have a wonderful relationship with your parents. They've
Yeah.
been encouraging. So how
Yeah.
did you tap into that teenage angst? Because I got to tell you, I'm a high school teacher when I'm not doing this
Oh,
entertainment
okay.
journalism thing.
Yeah.
So that teenage angst and that sarcasm that you have on Widow's Bay is so real that
Totally.
yeah. How do you tap into that with Matthew?
I actually think that having really supportive parents and having parents that I'm really close with allows me to do that easier. You know what I mean? Than having to experience it because, like growing up, my parents were very on me about looking at a lot of situations from different perspectives. You know what I mean? And so, like, I grew up like trying to understand situations by my perspective and other people's perspective and like why it's happening and like why somebody did that. And so I think that internally helped me with doing certain scenes and like understanding, especially as like a teenagey angsty kid, like how to not just be a teenagey angsty kid and to have like a story with him, but then also just to be like, you know I can really understand his perspective and really try and like figure out why he's acting like that and why and how he can be sarcastic, like what can I dig at somebody? Like what can I dig at Tom to like to get to him, you know what I mean? And I think that within all the characters that I've played, especially like the teenage son kind of, being upset and having a difficult life, I think I don't want to do it the same, and I try not to do it the same and to do it differently. And I think that Evan as a character is fun to play because he's so much smarter than I think people are giving him credit for, and there's so many different levels to him. And I think you really see it in like the later episodes of like him masking his true feelings, especially in episode 8 when he's reading those letters of like, you know, for that episode, he basically becomes the parent. You know what I mean? Like he's the one that's kind of talking with his dad. You know, like the power change that they have in that episode, and of him saying like, I'm very upset at you for doing this to me because you took that away from me. You took me knowing my mom away from me. And like I deserve the truth and you're gonna tell it to me. And I think that like having that change and having that like him reading the letters to his dad and doing it in a way that's like really sarcastic and just trying to dig at him because it's like I'm masking how I really feel because it's a really horrible thing to read those things that your mom had wrote. So it's like, how is Kingston now? How is Evan internalizing that? You know what I mean? And so I think that it's his coping mechanism. And I thought that like they wrote that really well.
Well, I find it really interesting because it kind of dawned on me. You know, you've already touched on this a little bit, but the trust that you have with Matthew Rhys,
Mhm.
obviously as a partner in terms of the acting, is
Mhm.
completely different than the
Mhm.
trust that Evan and Tom has.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
how do you kind of juxtapose those two together where you have like no trust with your dad, but you have
Mhm.
to have all the trust in the world with Matthew?
There's a fine line with because I really trust Matthew and deeply, and I think that there's a really fine line with like having that trust and then yearning for that trust. You know what I mean? And I think that Evan for to like change my perspective on it with Matthew is just like, oh, I feel so comfortable and I trust him so much. And then to get into it of the feeling of like, oh God, I wish I trust him and I wish that I was comfortable with him enough. You know what I mean? And like trying to change it from that and doing those scenes where it's like, I just don't, you know what I mean? And so because I can't, and so there's a fine line between that. That's a really good question because I think that it's like that's like the actor's job of like trying to get that from a different perspective. And I think that like reading the script, like when you're reading the script and you're going over your character, you should read it in a lot of different point of views. Even in your personal life, you have a really amazing day and like you book this project or whatever happened and you read the script and you get it from that perspective. And then you get a really shitty day, something happened, whatever, whatever. And you read a script, you read the same scene again and you get it from a totally different perspective because you're going into it differently. And I think that like doing those scenes with Matthew, knowing how it I should feel and knowing how like Evan really feels was fun and like easier to do those scenes with Matthew. So
Well, you're an avid photographer as well, which I'm
ah,
interested in because I can imagine being on these phenomenon like, Presumed Innocent, 56 Days, and now Widow's Bay, that you're a literal kid in a proverbial candy shop because, you've got all these fantastic DPs doing
yeah.
their job. And have you ever tried to kind of see how your DP is setting up a shot or your directors are setting things up? Are you trying to learn the business as you're going along? Or are you focused on your role?
I freaking love this question. Best you won best question of the day. I love photography and my gift to everybody on set of Widow's Bay is I took pictures behind the scenes of everybody of like Maddie and of all the directors and of the showrunners and the producers and I printed them out on like a nice paper and I gave it to them in a frame. Like that was my
Oh,
gift
I
to
love it.
everybody.
Right.
And the DPs I took pictures of them doing their job and everybody. And so it's a great question because I really, really I think I love being an actor and that I'm very passionate about it. If you talk with me long enough, like I love movies. And I think that like a dream that I want to do is direct. Like I would love to direct or DP on something because like I would do that with my friends. Like growing up, like we would do short films together and I would find the shots that I think looked best and yeah, I mean I use on set a lot. I'll try to use as much film as possible. Like I have my Nikon F3 is what I shoot on. And so that's from like the 80s. But I love it because it's film. But yeah, no, working with these DPs and working with these directors who have a very clear idea. And there's a lot of I've watched a lot of movies where like the shots are beautiful and they look amazing and it's wonderful. But I've also seen other movies that their shots are amazing and it tells the story. It helps tell the story. And that is a really big thing that I'm learning with like photography and cinematography. Telling your story through your lens is so important because it really gives you another perspective. It's not just heavily on the performance or the writing, it really, really visually can encapsulate you. And that is one of, if not the most important thing that film can do, you know? So
Absolutely. Yeah.
awesome question.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, I asked because you know what I picked up on in terms
Mhm.
of the shots used, especially with Evan, is
Mhm.
that if you look at a lot of the shots, there's a lot of long shots in this
Mhm.
show, right?
Mhm.
Showing kind of that picturesque
Mhm.
island life, and it's like a painting. And then
Yeah.
specifically with Evan, it's always kind of a tight two shot or a
Mhm.
close up, and
Mhm.
it kind of gives you that impression of claustrophobia,
Mhm.
right? And then, of course, you've got that great memorable shot. Everybody's going to remember this one of Matthew kind of checking, in the
Yeah.
car,
In the
right? And
car. Yeah.
that's a tight shot as well. Everything feels claustrophobic. So I'm wondering, having the camera kind of that close to you, does that inform your performance as well, especially being a photography guy?
That's a great question too. I think that, as you were saying before, like a lot of these shots that when I'm not in it or when it's not Tom and Evan, it's these very idyllic landscape shots. It's very, picturesque. And then when it's with Tom and Evan, and I think that that kind of telling the story, I think that like that really is showing like how Tom wants everybody to feel like they're perfect and they're in this perfect place and he's building this world of Widow's Bay and it's like a Martha's Vineyard and then when we have a scene together it's it's not that it's like the truth of it, you know what I mean? And it's like the rawness and realness of it, and that's what I thought that they do, like their handheld shots and their close-ups and stuff. And I think that having those scenes where it is close up and when you work with an actor like Matthew and with directors and showrunners like Katie, like you really they have the camera really close, but because they've built such a world and the scripts are really, really well done that you don't really see it because you're really in the scene. And when you're working with somebody like Matthew, you're really in that moment and that fades away. And so I think that that's really important for the world building that they do, but also just with the cinematographers, like they're really good at, like telling that story as well. And that's another thing. Like they have it very like what it really is and what Tom wants it to be. And I think that that's I'm glad that you picked up on that because hopefully other people will too.
Yeah, for sure. Well, okay, so being a comedy horror, right, or something that obviously has a footprint in both genres,
Mhm.
with you personally, what are you more susceptible to? Are you an easy laugh or are you an easy
Mhm.
scare?
I'm an easy laugh. My favorite thing to do in life is laugh. I love laughing and I think that like I don't know why I do get scared for certain things, but I don't know. I think that like when it's scary, I'm way more interested in like what's happening, and I'm way more. I'm not as susceptible to like I don't know, like to the jumps. I mean, I'm susceptible to jump scares, but I feel like for horror, like I'm so interested in what's happening and like the psychological like part behind it, and for comedy, like I love laughing. So any little thing that somebody does, I like to laugh. But I think that like what I think this show does well is it's absurdity in serious moments, and that's my personal humor, like the absurdity in those serious moments, especially with Evan's character. Oh my gosh, like being on set, and I laugh all the time when I'm on set and when I'm working, and it's very unprofessional, but I really am laughing because you're put into these serious situations that are just so dumb and absurd, and it's so funny. I love
I
it.
love it. Well, there's got to be tons of things that Evan can do next season.
Exactly.
But Kingston, thank you so much for your time, buddy,
Thank you
and
so much, man.
congratulations on a fantastic season. I love the
Thank you. I
show.
really appreciate you. Thank you. Really, really, really great questions. I appreciate you.
Hey Real students, thanks for watching. If you want to subscribe to Real School, click that round Real School logo right beside me. Also click that damn notification bell so you're aware of all of Real School's new content. You can follow me on Twitter, and of course, if you get anything out of Real School, you can always give a little back. Just click the link in the description below or the button down there, and you can become part of my Patreon team.